If you missed class today, we learned about lesson 13, supply side economics. So if I could trouble you to print off those questions and answer them as you watch along to the video, that'd be fantastic. Now, if you're watching this video because you need to reiterate some things or you missed some things in class, let me break it down for you. And again, the lesson was on supply side economics, and we started with this question. And I asked whether this is logical or not. The government raises taxes. Instead of bringing in more money, it actually reduces its revenues. Conversely, cutting taxes brings in more cash. Can you figure out how that works? All right, hopefully the gears are turning in your head with this one. So, this is related to a guy named Arthur Laffer. This is the fourth economist we've learned about, and he is synonymous with supply side economics. And here's a quote that I think summarizes supply side economics really well. He said, when you cut the highest tax rates on the highest income earners, government gets more money from them. So that's where he is coming from. And he is famous for the Laffer curve named after him. So can you interpret this? Okay, so if we look at the x-axis, we have the tax rate from no tax at all to taxing everything you make, all the way to tax revenue from low to high. So as I move along the x-axis, he says at a certain point, you're going to maximize that. Now you notice it's not that high of a tax rate. It's definitely closer to zero than 100. And then he said at a certain point, if you tax too much, it's going to have revenue decline. So essentially, he is pointing to the fact that too much taxation is not a healthy thing for the economy. So hopefully you can look at this and interpret it. If not, I'll talk to you about it in class or check out a YouTube video. But that's what he's famous for, the Laffer curve. And here he is, Arthur Laffer. He is connected, like the other three I taught you, he was a hot shot and had all sorts of accolades and awards. No different. He's one of the four heavy hitters in the world of economics. But he is connected in red here. He rose to national prominence as a member of President Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board and is best known for formalizing the Laffer curve, which illustrates how, beyond a certain point, higher tax rates can reduce government revenue. In 2019, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his influence on supply side economics by President Donald Trump. So that is Arthur Laffer. Republicans really like Arthur Laffer, just so you know. So this idea is also known as Reaganomics, and President Reagan was the president when I was a little boy from 1981 to 1989, two terms. He was popular from a lot of people. However, he did have his opponents as well. And here's what President Reagan said. Let's see if he has any valid points. So just hear me out. Ask yourself, is he making any valid points? The more government takes in taxes, the less incentive people have to work. What coal miner or assembly line worker jumps at the offer of overtime when he knows Uncle Sam is going to take 60% or more of his extra pay? And he does have a point, probably, because if it's not worth working, especially overtime, and you're already tired, it might not be worth it. At the same time, is he housing this in a way that is hiding the fact that he's taxing people of the lower income brackets? So those are kind of the two sides of the coin. Make your own opinion on this one. So let's talk about Reagan and his Vice President Bush Sr. Bush Sr.'s son was also the president. I'm talking about Bush Sr. And these are the policies at the time. This photo is Detroit, Michigan in the early 80s in the unemployment line. And you can see this on Schaefer, long, long line. So you can see things were rough back in the 80s. So Reagan's economic policies were this. Reagan encouraged private investment by cutting the federal government. And Reaganomics was all about budget cuts, tax cuts, increased defense spending. Those three things are the foundation of Reaganomics. Now, with these budget cuts, he maintains entitlement programs that benefit the middle class, but he cut programs that benefit poor and urban populations. So his biggest critics come from that demographic, the poor and the urban population. And here's another picture to show the Reagan years. And the green is military spending. And as you can see during his time from 81 to 89, that's a big increase. So supply side economics holds that lower taxes result in investment, greater productivity, more supply, lower prices. Congress decreases taxes by 25% over 3 years. And with this defense spending, you can see it almost doubled. And I asked the question, what were the opportunity costs associated with this? So you double the defense budget. What aren't you spending money on? So people who are pro-military, people in the military, I'm sure that was very popular with them. I was too little to remember all that. However, the people who need other programs, kind of going back to the whole guns and butter, if you remember that. So anyway, think about the opportunity cost with this change. By the way, if you look at the future, it got even more so. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So let me tell you about the years of my youth. And we're talking about 81 to 87. And I asked them the questions, what were they like economically? So from July of 81, November of 82, worst recession since the Great Depression. In early 83, consumer spending fuels economic upturn, more consumer confidence, decrease in inflation and unemployment. Now in 87, the market crashed big time, then recovered and continued up. And I remember I was in the eighth grade when it crashed, and some of my classmates had some families that really took a hit from that. That I do remember. And the national debt climbs big time. Spending outstrips revenues. New 1982 taxes do not balance the budget. And the national debt almost doubles by the end of Reagan's first term. Okay, by the way, here's a photo of Wall Street in 87 when it happened. And you can look at this. You can see, okay, here's the economy. Here's the economy. Boom. Okay, that is a fall. Okay, it dropped 22.23%. So I think you all can spot the really bad day. It was a really bad day. So Reagan also deregulated the economy by reducing the size of the government, and Reagan reduced government by deregulation, it's called. Less industry regulation. In theory, it increased competition. He claimed it increases competition. His supporters say it increased competition, which it probably did, and resulting in lower prices. You get that from supply and demand. However, with this deregulation, the budgets of the EPA that fight pollution and conserve natural resources got beat up, and the Interior Department gave permits for more oil drilling, lumbering, coal mining. Millions of acres of public land got taken over. So anyway, there's pros and cons for every decision. You can make your own opinion. And we learned about supply side, and there's two tax structures that are not. So see if you can find out which one's supply side, which ones are not. So we have progressive, tax rate increases as the taxable base increases, regressive, tax rate decreases as taxable base increases, and then proportional or flat. That's just steady. Everybody pays 15%, that kind of thing. So see if you can figure out which one is supply side and compare it to the other two. If you can't figure that out, I'll tell you in class when I see you. And I asked for you to interpret this into plain English. Okay, so this is the kind of final wrap up that I gave the people in class, and see if you can put it in plain English. The long-term economic impacts of Reaganomics have been significant, influencing not only the U.S. economy, but also shaping economic policies in subsequent administrations. The policies aim to stimulate economic growth, reduce inflation, and increase competitiveness, leading to a substantial rise in the gross national product and increased productivity. However, the legacy of Reaganomics has also been debated, particularly regarding its contribution to growing levels of inequality, rich getting richer, poor getting poorer. The policies have been invoked as a model for tax reform legislation, which has led to windfalls for countless Americans. Despite the mixed reviews, Reaganomics has been a pivotal moment in American economic history, laying the foundation for continued economic progress. So it is controversial. And how you feel about Reagan really illustrates how you feel about politics and economics. He's a very polarizing figure. The people who love him love him. The people who don't care for him really don't care for him. So, anyway, you can figure that out for yourself. Now, to end with, if you still didn't get any of this, let me try to break this down as simply as I can. Supply side economics. Higher taxes mean lower growth. Higher taxes mean lower growth. Okay, so hopefully you got this, and we have one more class in this unit, and then we will take our exam and move on to other things. So take care of yourselves.